In 1989, a 42-year-old pitcher became the first man in baseball history to reach 5,000 career strikeouts. He did it by throwing a 96-mile-per-hour fastball past Rickey Henderson, the greatest leadoff hitter who ever lived. No pitcher had ever done that before. Nobody had even come close. And the crazy part is, Nolan Ryan wasn't done. He was nowhere near done. He would pitch 4 more seasons after that night. He would throw 2 more no-hitters. He would put a 26-year-old in a headlock and punch him in the face on national television. And he would do all of it past the age of 40. By the time Nolan Ryan's arm finally gave out, his career strikeout total had reached a number so far beyond anyone else in the history of the sport that it barely looks real. A number so impossible that no active pitcher today is even halfway there. A number that the game of baseball, as it is currently played, will never allow anyone to reach again. This is the story of that number. And I don't think you understand just how impossible it is. So how difficult is 5,714 strikeouts? Let us start with the only man who ever came close. Randy Johnson was one of the most terrifying pitchers the game has ever produced. He was 6'10", left-handed, and he threw 100 miles per hour with a slider that made professional hitters look like they had never held a bat before. He won 5 Cy Young Awards. He struck out over 300 batters in a season 6 times. He threw a perfect game at the age of 40. By any reasonable measure, Randy Johnson is the second greatest strikeout pitcher in the history of baseball. His career total was 4,875. Nolan Ryan finished with 5,714. The gap between them is 839 strikeouts. Let that sit for a second. 839 strikeouts is not just a gap. It is a canyon. Imagine the all-time scoring leader in NBA history had that kind of margin over the second-place player. Imagine the all-time touchdown leader in NFL history had that same gap over whoever was next. That is not a record. That is a different sport. And here is another way to think about it. There are pitchers in the Baseball Hall of Fame who finished their entire careers with fewer than 839 total strikeouts. Whitey Ford, one of the greatest Yankees pitchers of all time, had 1,956 career strikeouts. The gap between Ryan and second place is nearly half of a Hall of Famer's entire career output. To understand how absurd that gap is, you need to understand what strikeouts actually mean in the context of a career. A pitcher who strikes out 200 batters in a single season is having an elite year. Most aces do not even reach that number. So the gap between Nolan Ryan and the second greatest strikeout pitcher who ever lived is roughly 4 full elite seasons of strikeouts. You could delete 4 of Ryan's best years from his career, erase them completely, and he would still be the all-time leader. But that is just the beginning. Let us zoom out further. There are levels to this. The first level is 1,000 career strikeouts. That's a solid career. You pitched for 8 or 10 years in the big leagues. You were a decent starter, you did your job, you got guys out, you helped your team win some games, and when you retired, people in your city remembered your name. A lot of pitchers never get there. 1,000 strikeouts means you belonged. The next level is 2,000. Now you're talking about a genuinely great pitcher. An all-star, someone who dominated for 12 to 15 years and was the best pitcher on his team for most of them. 2,000 strikeouts is a career most pitchers would kill for. It means you weren't just good, you were feared. Then there's 3,000. Only 17 pitchers in the entire history of Major League Baseball have ever reached 3,000 career strikeouts. That's 17 out of the tens of thousands of men who have stood on a big league mound since 1876. This is the line where people start talking about the Hall of Fame. If you get to 3,000 strikeouts, you are one of the greatest pitchers who has ever thrown a baseball. Full stop. You're in conversations with names like Tom Seaver, Bob Gibson, Greg Maddux, Pedro Martinez. Then there's 4,000. 4,000 strikeouts has only been reached by 4 pitchers in history. Nolan Ryan, Randy Johnson, Roger Clemens, and Steve Carlton. That's it. 4 men out of every pitcher who has ever played the game. 4 men across 150 years of professional baseball. And then there's 5,000. Only one human being has ever reached 5,000 career strikeouts. Nolan Ryan is the only member of the 5,000 strikeout club. He is the only member who will ever exist. Nobody else has come within 1,000 strikeouts of joining him. The club has 1 member and the door is welded shut. Here is how the all-time leaderboard reads as of today. Number 1, Nolan Ryan, 5,714. Number 2, Randy Johnson, 4,875. Number 3, Roger Clemens, 4,672. Number 4, Steve Carlton, 4,136. Number 5, Bert Blyleven, 3,701. Number 6, Tom Seaver, 3,640. Number 7, Don Sutton, 3,574. Number 8, Gaylord Perry, 3,534. Number 9, Walter Johnson, 3,509. Number 10, Justin Verlander, somewhere around 3,400. Look at those numbers again. Ryan has 839 more than Johnson, but Johnson only has 203 more than Clemens. Clemens only has 536 more than Carlton. Carlton only has 435 more than Blyleven. From 2nd place to 10th place, the gaps between each pitcher range from about 66 to 536. They're spaced out relatively evenly, like you'd expect on any all-time leaderboard in any sport. Then you get to 1st place and the gap is 839. The entire top of the leaderboard, from positions 2 through 10, spans a range of about 1,375 strikeouts. Ryan is 839 above the top of that range. He's not part of the leaderboard, he's floating above it. And here is the part that makes this record truly impossible. It's not just getting further from being broken, it's getting further away every single year. Because the game of baseball has fundamentally changed in ways that make it structurally impossible for any pitcher to ever accumulate the volume that Nolan Ryan did. In 1973, Nolan Ryan struck out 383 batters. That is the single-season strikeout record, and it still stands more than 50 years later. He broke Sandy Koufax's record of 382. A record that itself had stood since 1965 and was considered untouchable. On the night he broke it, September 27th against the Minnesota Twins, Ryan needed 16 strikeouts to pass Koufax. 16 in one game, against the best hitting team in the American League that year. The Twins had a collective .270 batting average. Their lineup included Rod Carew, the American League batting champion. Only about 9,000 fans showed up at Anaheim Stadium because nobody believed it could actually happen. Ryan struck out the side in the 1st inning, then 2 in the 2nd, 1 in the 3rd, 3 in the 4th, 2 in the 5th, 3 more in the 7th. He tied Koufax at 382 in the 8th inning, striking out Steve Bry. And then in the 11th inning, with the game tied at 4, Ryan threw 3 consecutive fastballs past pinch hitter Rich Reese for strikeout number 383. He had thrown over 200 pitches in a single game and won. That number of pitches in one start is so far outside the realm of modern possibility that it reads like fiction. Ryan threw 326 innings that year. He made 39 starts and completed 26 of them. He threw a complete game 2 out of every 3 times he took the mound. It was also the first year of the designated hitter in the American League, which meant Ryan was facing 9 real hitters every time through the lineup, instead of getting the easy strikeout against a pitcher. Some analysts have speculated that if he had faced pitchers instead of designated hitters, he could have reached 400 strikeouts. In today's game, most starting pitchers throw somewhere between 160 and 200 innings in a season. Managers pull starters after 5 or 6 innings as a matter of routine. Complete games have become so rare that some pitchers go entire seasons without finishing what they started. The idea of a pitcher throwing 326 innings in a year is as foreign to modern baseball as the idea of a quarterback playing without a helmet is to modern football. So let's do the math on what it would actually take to reach 5,714 strikeouts in today's game. If a modern pitcher averaged 250 strikeouts per season, which would make him one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball every single year, he would need 22 full, healthy seasons to reach Ryan's total. 22 seasons at an elite level with no injuries, no decline, no drop in performance. That has never happened, and almost certainly never will. If he averaged 200 strikeouts per season, which is still excellent, he would need 28.5 seasons. And if he averaged 300 strikeouts per season, a level of dominance that has only been achieved about 80 times in the entire history of baseball, he would still need 19 consecutive seasons at that pace. Nobody has ever sustained 300 strikeouts per season for even 10 years. The record is safe. It's not just safe. It's untouchable. Every year that passes, every rule change that limits pitch, counts and protects arms, every philosophical shift toward bullpen usage and 6-inning starts, the record moves further into the atmosphere like a satellite drifting away from Earth. To put it in perspective with today's game, the highest active pitcher on the all-time strikeout list is Justin Verlander, who has been pitching since 2005 and is one of the best pitchers of his generation. A future Hall of Famer, after more than 20 years in the big leagues, Verlander has around 3,400 strikeouts. That's 2,300 short of Ryan. Verlander would need roughly 10 more elite seasons just to catch up. He's already over 40 years old. Max Scherzer, another future Hall of Famer with 3 Cy Young Awards, has around 3,367. Clayton Kershaw, one of the most dominant pitchers of the 21st century, has under 3,000. None of them are within shouting distance, and none of them ever will be. And here's the thing that really seals it. The last pitcher to lead Major League Baseball in strikeouts with more than 300 in a season was Gerrit Cole in 2019 with 326. Before that, you have to go back to Randy Johnson in 2001 with 372. These numbers used to happen regularly in Ryan's era. Now they happen maybe once a decade. The game has moved on. The record hasn't. What makes this even more absurd is that Nolan Ryan was never supposed to be this. The New York Mets, the team that drafted him, gave up on him after the 1971 season. They traded him to the California Angels for Jim Fregosi, an aging third baseman who was already past his prime. It is widely considered one of the worst trades in the history of baseball. The Mets looked at a 24-year-old flamethrower who walked too many guys and could not stay healthy because of blisters on his pitching hand, and they decided he was not worth the trouble. Ryan arrived in California and immediately became a different pitcher. In his first season with the Angels in 1972, he won 19 games and struck out 329 batters. The next year, he threw 2 no-hitters, set the single-season strikeout record, and finished second in the Cy Young voting. He averaged 19 wins and 322 strikeouts per year from 1972 through 1977. The Mets, meanwhile, never recovered from giving him away. The man they traded for, Jim Fregosi, lasted a year and a half in New York before they shipped him off. Ryan pitched for 22 more seasons after that trade and struck out 5,282 more batters as a non-Met. But what makes Nolan Ryan's 5,714 strikeouts truly legendary is not just the number itself. It's the way he accumulated them. Because Nolan Ryan was not some robotic efficiency machine who carefully managed his arm across 27 careful seasons. He was a wild, untamed force of nature who overwhelmed you with pure violence. Ryan holds the all-time record for walks, too. 2,795 bases on balls. That's almost 1,000 more than the second-place pitcher on that list. He walked more batters than anyone in history, which means he also put more runners on base for free than anyone in history. He didn't paint corners, he didn't nibble, he didn't try to trick you. He just reared back and threw the ball as hard as he physically could, and if it was in the zone, good luck. And if it wasn't in the zone, well, he'd try again. Here's what that actually looked like from the batter's box. You're standing 60 feet and 6 inches from a man who is throwing a baseball 100 miles an hour. You have roughly 4/10 of a second to decide whether to swing. And you know, from watching his last 3 pitches, that 2 of them were unhittable strikes, and 1 of them was 3 feet outside the zone. You have absolutely no idea which one is coming next. And neither does he. That's the terror of Nolan Ryan. He was simultaneously the most dominant and the most unpredictable pitcher alive. He could strike you out on 3 pitches or walk you on 4, and the difference between those outcomes had nothing to do with your ability and everything to do with whether the ball happened to arrive in the zone. In one game in 1973 against the Detroit Tigers, Ryan threw 235 pitches. He struck out 19 batters. He also walked 10. That game went 13 innings. In today's baseball, a pitcher is usually pulled after 90 to 100 pitches. Ryan threw more than twice that and kept going into extra innings. This combination of dominance and wildness made him the most terrifying pitcher anyone had ever faced. 2-time National League MVP Dale Murphy once said that Ryan was the only pitcher you start thinking about 2 days before you face him. Not the day before, 2 days before. He lived in hitters' heads rent-free for 48 hours before they even stepped into the batter's box. Pete Rose, the all-time hits leader, said it even more directly. At the age of 41, Nolan Ryan is the top power pitcher in the league. You can talk about Dwight Gooden, you can talk about Mike Scott, you can talk about whoever you want, but none of them throw as consistently hard as Ryan does. And the numbers back up the fear. Over the course of his 27-year career, opposing batters hit only .204 against Nolan Ryan. That's a career batting average against of .204. It is the lowest in the history of Major League Baseball. Every hitter who ever stepped in against him, across nearly 3 decades, averaged out to being below the Mendoza line. He didn't just strike people out. He made the act of getting a hit against him a statistically improbable event. And the thing that made Ryan different from every other power pitcher in history is that his fastball refused to age. Most pitchers lose velocity in their early 30s. By 35, the fastball that used to sit at 95 is sitting at 91. By 38, they have either adapted into a different kind of pitcher or they have retired. Nolan Ryan threw 98 miles per hour at the age of 46. His arm did not slowly fade, it just kept burning until it finally physically broke. Part of the reason was a training regimen that was decades ahead of its time. While most pitchers in the 1980s treated the off-season as vacation, Ryan worked with Gene Coleman, the Houston Astros' strength and conditioning coach, on a year-round program of weightlifting, distance running, stationary cycling, and flexibility exercises. He maintained the body of a man 20 years younger through sheer discipline and work ethic. In an era before modern sports science, before pitch tracking and biomechanics labs, Ryan figured out on his own what it took to keep a human arm throwing 100 miles per hour into middle age. And even when his body did try to fail him, he refused to let it. After the 1986 season, Ryan went to see Dr. Frank Jobe, the surgeon who had invented Tommy John surgery. Jobe told him there was a ligament tear in his right elbow and recommended surgery. Ryan was about to turn 40. The recovery would be 15 to 18 months. He looked at the timeline, decided it did not make sense at his age, and went home. By mid-December, the elbow stopped hurting. He came back in 1987 and led the National League in earned run average and strikeouts. Then he led the league in strikeouts again in 1988, 1989, and 1990. He pitched 7 more seasons after being told he needed surgery. 7 seasons, 2 no-hitters, and over 1,000 more strikeouts. all on an elbow that a doctor had told him was torn. Ryan's career can be measured in milestones that came at ages when most pitchers are coaching Little League. At age 36, pitching for the Houston Astros, he passed Walter Johnson to become baseball's all-time strikeout leader. Johnson's record of 3,509 had stood for 56 years. People had called it unbreakable. Ryan broke it on April 27, 1983 in Montreal, striking out Brad Mills of the Expos in the 8th inning to take sole possession of first place. And then he played another 10 seasons. At age 40, he led the National League with a 2.76 earned run average. At an age when most pitchers can't make a roster, he was the best in his league at preventing runs. At age 42, he struck out 301 batters, his 6th career season of 300 or more strikeouts. Before Ryan did it that year, all other modern-era pitchers combined had only produced 16 seasons of 300 or more strikeouts. He had 6 of them by himself. At age 43, he won his 11th strikeout title, leading the American League with 232 strikeouts. He was the oldest pitcher ever to lead a league in strikeouts. At age 44, he threw his 7th career no-hitter, beating the Toronto Blue Jays on May 1, 1991. The previous record for career no-hitters was 4, held by Sandy Koufax. Ryan didn't just break that record, he lapped it. 7 no-hitters. The next closest pitcher in history has 4. And through all of this, through all the records and milestones and history, Ryan was still a full-time starting pitcher, making his starts every 5 days, still throwing 95 miles per hour, still scaring the life out of every hitter who had to step in against him. He wasn't hanging on. He wasn't a sentimental roster spot given to an aging legend. He was still one of the best pitchers in baseball at an age when most players are 10 years into retirement. He recorded 200 strikeouts in 15 different seasons. Think about that. In 15 separate years, Nolan Ryan struck out at least 200 batters. For context, there are Hall of Fame pitchers who never struck out 200 batters in a single season during their entire career. Ryan did it 15 times across 24 years, from 1972 to 1991. He led the league in strikeouts 11 times. 11 times he was the single best pitcher in his league at making batters swing and miss. The only pitcher in history with more strikeout titles is Walter Johnson with 12. And Johnson pitched in the dead ball era against competition that no longer exists. He recorded 300 strikeouts in a season 6 times. The only other pitcher to do it even 5 times is Randy Johnson. Sandy Koufax, widely considered one of the most dominant pitchers who ever lived, did it 3 times. Ryan doubled him, and he did all of this while also throwing 7 no-hitters, which is its own separate untouchable record. He threw the first 2 in 1973, the same year he set the single-season strikeout record. He threw his 5th in 1981, breaking Sandy Koufax's record of 4. He threw his 6th in 1990, at age 43, beating the defending World Series champion Oakland Athletics on the road. And he threw his 7th in 1991, at age 44, against the Toronto Blue Jays. In that final no-hitter, he struck out 16 batters and allowed only 2 base runners all night. He was 44 years old, the oldest pitcher ever to throw a no-hitter, and he made it look routine. That same season, he allowed the fewest hits per 9 innings of any pitcher in the American League, and had the highest strikeout rate per 9 innings in the league, at 44. The man was pitching no-hitters and leading the league in dominant stats at an age when his peers were a decade into retirement. Then there's the Ventura incident. On August 4, 1993, Nolan Ryan was 46 years old. He was in his final season, his 27th year in the big leagues. He hit Robin Ventura of the Chicago White Sox with a pitch in the 3rd inning. Ventura was 26. He threw down his bat, tossed his helmet, and charged the mound. What happened next became one of the most replayed moments in baseball history. Ryan grabbed Ventura in a headlock with his left arm and punched him repeatedly in the head with his right fist. A 46-year-old man ragdolled a 26-year-old professional athlete on national television. Ventura was ejected. Ryan was not. He stayed in the game and pitched 7 innings, allowing only 1 earned run. He got the win. He was 20 years older than the man who charged him, and he won both the fight and the baseball game. That moment captured everything about Nolan Ryan. The toughness, the competitiveness, the refusal to back down from anything or anyone at any age. He was not just a pitcher, he was a force of nature wrapped in a Texas Rangers uniform. George W. Bush, who owned the Rangers at the time, later wrote about the moment. He said Ryan looked like a beast protecting his lair, and that Ventura must have been irrational to charge someone as big and tough as Nolan. The Ventura fight happened less than 2 months before Ryan's career ended, and in a way it became the perfect symbol of who he was. Even at 46, even in his final season, you did not want to challenge Nolan Ryan. Not at the plate, not on the mound, not anywhere. And it is worth noting what Ryan meant to the Rangers franchise beyond just wins and strikeouts. When he signed with Texas as a free agent before the 1989 season, he transformed the franchise. Average attendance on nights Ryan pitched was 8,000 fans higher than on other nights. The Rangers topped 2 million total attendance every year after he arrived, which led directly to the construction of a new ballpark in Arlington. In his first 3 years with the Rangers alone, on top of the 2 no-hitters, Ryan also pitched 6 one-hitters, 8 two-hitters, and 12 three-hitters. Every time he took the mound, there was a genuine chance the fans would witness history. And more often than not, they did. And then, 49 days after the Ventura fight, the force of nature finally met its limit. On September 22, 1993, Ryan took the mound at the Kingdom in Seattle for what would be his final start. He was 11 days away from finishing his 27th and final season. His elbow had been tight during warm-ups. He knew something was wrong. In the first inning, without recording a single out, he gave up a single, walked 3 batters, and allowed a grand slam. Then, while throwing a pitch to Dave McGarden, it happened. The ulnar collateral ligament in his right elbow tore, and he heard it pop like a rubber band. He threw 1 more pitch after the ligament tore. It was clocked at 98 miles per hour, 98 with a torn ligament, at 46 years old. He walked off the mound, came back out to acknowledge a standing ovation from the Seattle crowd, and never threw another pitch. His career ended not with a decline, not with a slow fade into mediocrity, but with a violent physical break. His arm did not get old. It exploded. His right elbow, 46 years, 7 months, and 24 days old, punished by more than 80,000 big league pitches, had finally had enough. There's a final piece to this story that brings everything full circle. During that 1993 season, Ryan's last, he spent time mentoring a young pitcher on the Seattle Mariners named Randy Johnson. Johnson was wildly talented but struggled with control, and Ryan counseled him on the mental approach to pitching. Johnson would go on to become the 2nd greatest strikeout pitcher in history. The man whose 4,875 strikeouts sit 839 behind Ryan's record. Ryan didn't just set the all-time mark. He personally helped train the only man who would ever come within 1,000 strikeouts of reaching it. When asked about the ending, Ryan said it simply, "There's no way I'll ever throw again. It's just a hell of a way to end a career." And what a career it was. 27 seasons, 4 teams across 4 decades. The New York Mets from 1966 through 1971. The California Angels from 1972 through 1979. The Houston Astros from 1980 through 1988. And the Texas Rangers from 1989 through 1993. He debuted when Lyndon Johnson was president and retired when Bill Clinton was in office. He faced fathers and sons. He struck out batters who weren't born when he threw his first pitch. 3 teams retired his number. The Angels retired number 30. The Astros retired number 34. The Rangers retired number 34. He is one of only 3 players in Major League history to have his number retired by 3 or more teams, alongside Jackie Robinson and Frank Robinson. He was so dominant for so long in so many places that 3 separate franchises said nobody will ever wear that number again. And despite all of this, despite 27 seasons, despite 5,714 strikeouts, despite 7 no-hitters, despite being the most feared pitcher of his generation for the better part of 3 decades, Nolan Ryan never won a single Cy Young award. Not one. He finished second twice. He made 8 All-Star teams. He won 324 games. But the sport's highest individual pitching honor was given to someone else every single year of his career. It's one of the strangest facts in baseball. The greatest strikeout pitcher who ever lived never once won the award that goes to the best pitcher. It doesn't matter. Awards are voted on by humans. Records are written in stone, and 5,714 is carved so deep into the stone of baseball history that no amount of time, no change in the game, no future generation of pitchers will ever scratch it. When he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1999, he received 491 out of 497 votes, 98.79%. At the time, the second highest percentage in history. Only his former Mets teammate Tom Seaver had received a higher share of the vote. The same organization that traded Ryan away for a washed-up third baseman in 1971 watched him walk into Cooperstown with one of the most overwhelming endorsements the Hall of Fame had ever seen. But the number that defines him, the number that will outlast every other statistic from his remarkable career, is 5,714. It's not just a record, it's a monument. It stands alone, separated from the rest of baseball history by 839 strikeouts, a gap so wide it has its own gravitational pull. The Baseball Hall of Fame put it best. If a pitcher began his career with 300 strikeouts in his rookie season and matched that total for each of the next 18 seasons, he would still be 14 strikeouts short of Nolan Ryan's all-time record. That's 19 consecutive seasons of 300 strikeouts. An entire generation of historically rare dominance. And it still wouldn't be enough. Rickey Henderson, the 5,000th man to go down swinging against the Ryan Express, put it as well as anyone ever could. After the game, he told reporters it was an honor to be number 5,000. He said Davey Lopes had told him once that if Ryan ain't struck you out, you ain't nobody. 5,714 batters found out they were somebody, and the record they helped build will stand forever. Like and subscribe for more baseball documentaries. Until next time.